and in 1805, with the signing of the Toronto Purchase, is now the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit. As we reach back to those first Torontonians, we remember our Mother Earth through the 7 grandfather teachings: wisdom, bravery, respect, honesty, truth, humility, and love. The stories of each of these nations endure and continue to guide our thoughts and actions on this land. And as we acknowledge our Mother Earth, we acknowledge the medicine wheel and its teachings. We recognize the 4 directions: north, south, east, and west, and the 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. It is these 4 seasons that represent the circle of life. Nindanoe Maganidag, which means all my relations, which means we are all related. Aho, miigwech matakuyasan. Hey y'all, oh yeah.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Rebecca Carbon. I am principal and founder of Art Plus Public Unlimited, and my team and I have been working with the incredible ArtworxTO team on several aspects of the ArtworxTO program as it's unfolded over the course of almost the past year. I'm excited to be back here with you for our 10th and final talk of the ArtworxTO Talks series. This evening is our second of 2 talks titled Setting the Table. I'd like to thank Stella Artois for supporting these talks. Stella Artois is ArtworxTO's official beer sponsor and has specifically put their support into the talks series. Stella wants to help Toronto's audiences make sure they make time for the important things in life, like art and good company and good food. So it seems like a good fit here. ArtworxTO is a full year of public art programming unfolding across the city of Toronto that aims to greatly diversify the opportunities for artists and audiences to engage in art. We have over 1,400 artists involved in this program and more than 300 new installations, murals, screenings, performances, and events taking place over the course of the year. So over this same year, ArtworxTO Live at 5 has highlighted some of these projects, as well as a number of other amazing public art initiatives taking place around town. Live at 5 is a series of talks about some overarching issues within public art practices today, loosely arranged around ideas of art and health. We've been examining 5 themes over 10 events. So over the course of the series, we've looked at art and emerging from the pandemic, how artist practices have adapted to public spaces, community building and wellness through the arts, gathering, sharing experiences and the positive impacts and role that art has played in this. All access, how do questions about access and accessibility inform a conversation about how public art comes to be in a place, to what end and for whom, as well as defining a monument landscape for the future, an overview of ArtworxTO projects with Monument Lab, which resulted in policy recommendations regarding key aspects of the city's public art and monuments collection. And we had this project in dialogue with a number of other artists practicing to push the boundaries, push the definition of monuments within our city. And so the conversations today have been really rich and inspiring, and I'm really pleased that all have been recorded and live online in the ArtworxTO on-demand library. Our hope is that they'll become a valuable resource for people near and far interested in various aspects that intersect with health and art in public. And tonight we're going into our second of 2 chapters on setting the table. As we emerge from isolation, we're all welcoming the opportunities to come together in person, and our ability to share ideas, communicate concepts, myths, and stories is really what makes us human. Making recipes and messes in the kitchen and making art are both processes that in some way are a means of balancing between carrying on and breaking with tradition. Working with the knowledge from those coming before us, artists, other art movements, cultural recipes, together with innovation, where and how does the individual maker or baker divest and diverge and take things in a new direction, forming their own practice, their own recipe. I mentioned at the opening in the earlier chapter of Setting the Table, one of the phrases that I love that relates to food is that you need to break some eggs to make an omelet. And it's a phrase that I love because it refers to the need to break with the status quo or kind of make a bit of a mess in order to make something new. It speaks to this process of experimentation that applies to both art and cooking, and is about working within rules and known experience to push the boundaries on the creative side, while also on the receiving side, it talks about kind of an audience for art or a guest at a meal. Both are about shared language of describing our world and the interrelation of experiences and existence. So the possibilities, ideals, values, and politics are all things that we communicate through art, and they're also things that we explore through food and that we share around a table. So this is our final talk about setting the table, conversations between chefs who push the boundaries in their culinary skills and artists who work with food to create dialogue about our shared experiences. So before I hand over to Chef Karima, who is our moderator for today, a couple of housekeeping notes. We have a brief 60 minutes together. If you're watching us live on YouTube, please feel free to type questions for our panelists in the comments there, because we'll have a question period near the end of the hour. And if you want to rewatch this video again and again later, you can do so in the ArtworxTO on-demand library. So without further ado, our moderator, Chef Karima, is a first-generation Canadian of Trinidad and Tobago descent. Karima has over 20 years in the hospitality industry. Her tagline is, "Mom had me cooking since the 80s." And she combines her love of Caribbean flavors with her passion for culinary cuisine to create unique tastes of the world. Chef Karima continues to feed her food vocabulary and passion for cooking. She seasons her culinary creations with her fun-loving, energetic personality and adds her unique touch to every dish. Throughout the years, her palette of flavors has diversified. She incorporates flavors from the Caribbean and North America to feed her love of unique dishes and creates culinary masterpieces using ingredients ranging from classic to exotic tastes. Chef Karima actually facilitated a cooking workshop this past Saturday for the ArtworxTO Yorkdale Hub, where she made roti and talked about its history and the ties between food, culture, and history in Caribbean and Caribbean diaspora. So over to you, Chef Karima.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. That's so nice. Yes. And the workshop was actually really good. So it was a lot of fun too. Okay, so I'm here and we're going to start off with Samir Farooq. And I know I said his name right. Samir Farooq is a Canadian artist of Pakistani and Ugandan Indian descent. Very nice. With a versatile approach that shifts between sculpture, photography, documentary film, and anthropological methods. He investigates strategies of representation to expand the ways through which museums have looked at the past through traditional forms of collection, interpretation, and display. Farooq foregrounds community-based models of knowledge, production, and an array of practices in order to suggest new ways of narrating our culture's history. Farooq has held exhibitions throughout the world. Susan Hobbs, 2022, all the way to Turkey, 2010, back to Morocco, the British Library. Like, there's so many. Like, I can't name them all. I can't. I'm sorry, but Samir has an array of like knowledge and like display of art all over the place. So his reviews and essays dedicated to his work have been published by Art Forum, Canadian Art, The Washington Post, BBC Culture, ArtNet, The Huffington Post, and C Magazine, among others. Samir, how are you? Where are you? Let's yourself. I tried. See how I did? I did.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And it's so nice to meet you and to feel your energy across the Zoom lines. It's really good to be here. So yeah, I've been asked to talk about a project I did in collaboration with the curatorial collective Aisle 4 through their in-residence program. And this was held at the Scarborough Museum in Toronto. And the whole project, the range of in-residence projects were around really thinking about ways of working with public space, specifically within a decolonial perspective. I'm very interested in thinking through museums, so working at the Scarborough Museum was a very good fit. Aisle 4 is an incredible collective of 4 women that are working out of Toronto and do several innovative projects around the city. So when I got asked to do this project, and we could move to the first slide. When I got asked to do this project, I really struggled at first around what I wanted to do. And at the time I was asked, I was in Pakistan traveling around with my dad, and something just clicked. On this trip, I went to Lahore, Islamabad, Rawalpindi, Peshawar, Karachi, and in each of these cities, and you could go to the next slide, there were tandoor ovens, and they were vital meeting places for the community. So it was just by happenstance, I happened to be in Pakistan and was thinking about what I would do in this residency, at the same time as I was kind of looking at these incredible gathering places. So basically, families would make their dough at home and bring it to a local neighborhood tandoor and fire it. So here's an image of the Scarborough Museum, and it sits in the beautiful Thompson Memorial Park in Bendale. And what immediately struck me was that the park in the summer, like many parks in Toronto, are full of people barbecuing. And mainly, South Asian, Middle Eastern, anyone along the barbecue belt is in the park and they're going for it. So when I saw this activity in the park, I was really inspired to build a tandoor oven for the community, because Bendale is the home of many South Asians, but also from all these tandoor regions, including the South Caucasus to Iran to the Uyghur Muslim minority in Northwest China. There's populations of all of these communities in Bendale. So I thought it would be a really great opportunity to provide a community oven at the museum. And the idea is that it is a semi-permanent structure in the Scarborough Museum grounds. And together with my assistant, Daniel Antelucci, we built this tandoor with the materials that we had available. We did a lot of research with the Aisle 4 curatorial team around different tandoors in the area, and a lot are electric, and we wanted to build a more traditional one that would be a little bit more self-sufficient in the park. So we basically, as you can see in these images, put together 2 large clay planters, and then constructed a shell around the clay vessels with stone, and then insulated in between the clay and the stone with sand. So it took about a week. It looks really simple, and when I was watching YouTube videos to how to construct a tandoor oven, it looked so easy, but it was about a full week of 12-hour days putting this together. You'll see in this image, there's also a sort of small chimney on the bottom to allow for air circulation. So it's a very foolproof design, and we were meant to have a launch of the tandoor in 2019 when it was constructed, but winter hit and it was pushed a few months into the spring of 2020, and then we all know what happened then. But we visited the tandoor a couple months ago, and it's still going strong. So we're very, very much hoping to have a launch in the fall, providing that we can have food-related events in the city. So I've thought a lot about materials. I'm a sculptor mainly, and I've thought a lot about materials in my practice. And here it's quite interesting. I often work with ceramics, but I think here the material was dough. And I think there's so many interesting qualities and political ramifications to using dough as material. It's economical, it's nourishing, and it is highly available, very transportable. And what it did in this museum was it transported the museum from being very much a site of sort of this Victorian / like old Canadian cuisine, butter tarts and things like that. And it turned it into a Pakistani bakery. So I was very excited about how that material sort of, shifted up the space a little bit. So I will leave it at that, and I'm very excited to hear the other projects. So thank you very much.
I love that. I love tandoori. I love Indian food. I'm a chef as well. So I do, I do fusion type food, and a lot of it, and I'm Trinidadian, so there's a lot of Hindu, and I was raised Muslim, so there's a lot of that in Trinidad. So I grew up around all that. But so that's different. So anyways, moving on. That was great, Samir. I appreciate that. I'm going to have to check that out for sure. Yes, thank you. Okay, Diane. How are you?
Hi. Nice to meet you, Chef Karima, and everyone.
I don't want to butcher your last name. I already did when you weren't online.
Borsato.
See, that's not what I was going to say. Wasn't going to say that. It was going to sound so pretty. It was going to sound like I chopped it up and put it in the frying pan.
It's okay. It's fair.
I'm good.
I'm having a hard time hearing. Am I frozen or are you frozen? Uh-oh. Can you hear me? All of a sudden? You can? Okay, I can't hear myself, but I will just keep talking. So thanks so much, Chef Karima, and thanks so much, Rebecca, and nice to meet you. Thanks for inviting me and thinking of me for this project. So nice to hear from Samir about the tandoori oven too. I wish I was there.
Center for the Arts, the Vancouver Arts Gallery, the National Art Center for Fogo Island Arts, the Creative Times Summit, and the Toronto Biennial of Art. She is also Associate Professor of Experimental Studio at the University of Guelph in Canada, where she teaches courses exploring live, site-responsive environmental art practices. Her recent books include Outdoor School, I'm sorry for the noise, Outdoor School, Contemporary Environmental Art 2021, co-edited with Amish Morrell, and Mushrooming, a field guide to mushrooms and fungi in contemporary art, launching in Canada in the fall of 2022 and in the US in the spring of 2023. I'm going to have to learn about that, and you go ahead and tell us more. Hit it, Diane.
I'm delighted to. Can you hear me now? I think I gapped out for a little bit, but you can hear me?
Everyone can hear her? Thumbs up.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for having me, Chef Karima and Rebecca. I'm really pleased to be here. Nice to hear from Samir too about the tandoori oven. I'm so sad I missed sharing and enjoying the bread together with everyone. So if we could show my slides, Chris, that would be great. Great, there's an apple. Let's see, where do we begin? I think the first slide is my family. Okay, here we are. So I've been invited to talk about two ongoing projects. The last few years, I think as an artist, I've really for many years, I've been interested in making art with food and with people, and they're very sort of alive events and practices that are alive and social. My projects never end now. So here's an example of a few projects like that. The first is an image from an exhibition that my partner curated, Amish Morrell, called Outdoor School. And so it's my partner Amish and my son Felix, and we're gathered around a table with a group of people at the University of Toronto in Scarborough. We're leading a mushroom foray. And so we've been doing this now, I think, for 8 years. We're doing another one this year in September. We love going to UTSC and doing a mushroom foray in Scarborough. The students there tell us that, there's a beautiful woods there, but they've never walked around in it. And they've never thought of anything as more than just undifferentiated green. And it's been a really incredible practice. Like, I'm not a scientist, I'm an artist, but for a few years, I became interested in identifying plants and really obsessed with mushrooms. And so I started leading forays for artists and anyone else interested in these kinds of things. To me, you're looking at a picture now of a group of people in the woods in Scarborough. They found a giant puffball mushroom, and it's a wonder. Like, this happens every fall. It's probably about this big. You know, it looks like the moon fell out of the sky. And people don't actually realize how much fungi is around in the city, you know, everywhere. You know, thousands, you know, hundreds and thousands of species, all with unique stories and weird features, you know, colors, forms, as exciting as any sculpture. And so, you know, I always take my students mushrooming. We can keep going. My art students, and you know, this foray at UTSC, as well as other public forays. For me, it's very much a way that I practice as an artist, seeing, as well as using all of my senses. You know, when you identify a mushroom, you have to look really closely at every little feature, you know, tiny hairs and escapers and pores and things like that, as well as, you know, you have to smell things, sometimes you nibble things. It's a very, like, intensely sensorial practice, and I love sharing that with my students. It's something that we do together. We walk slowly. It's a very kind of contemplative, attentive way of being in place. And this is really meaningful. You know, people who live and work in a place forever have never really spent time with this kind of, you know, sensory immersion, you know, close to things in a place. And so even if you're not particularly crazy about mushrooms or you don't find anything edible, it's always, for me, you know, a really intensely vivid kind of experience, and, you know, a way of learning socially that, you know, you can't just trust an app or a book. If you're a mushroom hunter, you really need the sort of tacit knowledge from other people. And for me, this is a very beautiful way of being connected to others and intensely to a place and a time and a season. So we can carry on to the next couple images. So here's just a you know, a little snapshot of a few of the kinds of species that we would find, like, in Toronto, you know, and in the surrounding region. You know, there are extremely deadly mushrooms. There are mushrooms shaped like stars. There are, you know, mushrooms that make you hallucinate, and mushrooms that are, you know, gastronomic luxuries, medicine and food, and all kinds of wondrous things. You know, mushrooms that make you see God. You know, they're all there, and most people don't even know there's, like, a whole kingdom. Literally, it's a kingdom. They're not plants. You know, you step on it. And for me too, you know, something I talk about with students and artists is, like, this is also a practice of finding beauty, like in compost and shit, and in the darkest places in the woods. And you know, the more you develop your sensory literacy for these things, the more you see and the more you experience, and the more beauty and, you know, knowledge and things are available, and food. And it's such a delight, and it changes every year. It's a wonder. So we can carry on. These are some students, you know, smelling, and at the end of a foray, if you've ever been on one, you know, you fan out for about 2 hours, and everyone collects everything they see, and then we bring them all together, and together with a much more experienced, you know, senior mycologist, we identify everything and talk about some of the features and learning how to identify mushrooms. And so this, you know, it isn't really an artwork, but I'm an artist and I do it. And so I've kind of told the museum that I'm donating it to them as an artwork. It's part of their permanent collection. And so every year I do this, and this is part of the permanent collection. I do think of it as a practice, but the University of Toronto Scarborough Gallery, the Doris McCarthy Gallery, they own this piece as a part of their permanent collection, which delights me, just to press at the boundaries of that. And so the next piece, talking about objects, which I'm just quite preoccupied by things, you know, especially things I can hold in my hand, and something as ordinary and ubiquitous as an apple became an obsession for me for a few years. I sort of have serial obsessions and they just accumulate. And, you know, the more I started learning about apples, I realized that you can't just like plant a Granny Smith tree with a seed. Like, in fact, every single seed in a Granny Smith apple will give you a different tree with different apples on it. Apple seeds are like people, you know, they share genetic material and they're all unique. So every Granny Smith or Macintosh or Red Delicious that you've ever eaten, that all of us have ever eaten, have been clones from one original tree. And, you know, it turns out that like orchards and apple trees and apples are really like cultural things. You know, people have been grafting and propagating this fruit for millennia. And apples, once you learn about different kinds of apples, if we go to the next slide, once you start learning about the different varietals, here's a little selection of apples I had on my kitchen table that I was reading about and having an apple tasting. You start to realize that apples actually tell a story of human migration around the world. You know, they've come with us as human beings have moved around the world, and they record in their stories and in the absences of certain varietals, stories of colonization, of violence, of survival, and our fraught relationships with one another and with the land where apple trees grow. I learned that in Ontario and also across much of North America, there were Indigenous orchards. Many of the varietals that Indigenous peoples were propagating have gone extinct because those orchards were destroyed by settlers and stolen. And so the varietals that remain, that are gone, they hold in them this story of human movement and our relationships. If we carry on to the next slide. So, you know, this was a big sprawling project, but what I decided to do was plant an orchard as public art. It became an obsession. I wanted, you know, Rebecca mentioned at the beginning, kind of reimagining what a monument is, you know, the idea of a permanent artwork. And I couldn't get it out of my head that like trees, that I wanted to plant trees as a permanent artwork. Like what else, what other kind of artwork would give you like shade and flowers and food and, you know, and clean up the air, you know, trees do so much. And so what I decided to do was actually sort of make a composition of apple varietals. And I chose, if we go to the next slide, a selection of... Mhm.
Sorry, darling. So sorry. You've gone over like
Can
4
you hear me?
minutes.
Oh, I'm so
No,
sorry. Anyway,
okay. It's okay.
different varietals, historic and unusual, and it's an orchard in Mississauga, and it's a permanent public art in Mississauga. So sorry about that. Got carried away.
No,
with the
no,
story.
not a problem. I didn't want to just interrupt you because
Oh,
it's,
please do.
but because we have only 30 minutes left.
Of course. Looking at the time and.
I know I was interested definitely in the mushrooms. That's amazing. I didn't know we had so much here. I was more thinking like, you know, up north, not necessarily in the city. I love cooking with mushrooms. So that's really interesting to know. I'm learning so much here. But yes, so sorry to interrupt you. We're going to have to move on. And when I get to the question period, you could probably elaborate a little bit more on that. Okay, thank you. Hi, Rob.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Okay, I'm going to introduce you. And clearly, I've been messing up on words here and there, but hey, it's okay. We're all friends here. No judgment. Right, Berlin? No judgment, right? Right. Okay. So, Rob.
Oh, I think you might be frozen.
Hello? Are we back?
No, you're back.
Okay. Okay. Did I freeze as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Rob Shostak, correct, okay, is a trained architect, multidisciplinary artist, and now baker based in Toronto, whose work navigates the intersection of place, memory, and time. Okay. Shostak's artwork has been exhibited at the Gladstone Hotel, Toronto Waterfront, and the Bentway, and has appeared in Architectural Record, Azure, Domus, Hey Alma, and among others. Alongside his professional accomplishment, he is known for his custom costume design of Toronto landmarks. This ongoing project is a display of his love for Toronto and his passion for design, city building, and community. His current installation, Parchment, I seen that, I reposted it, is now on view at Fenster Gallery, open 24/7 on College Street, just east of Bathurst. Shostak is a co-founder of Studio Ven Studio, a queer-led arts collective. You can find him on Instagram at RobOnTO. Oh, Robonto? ROBONTO, and his work at robonto.com. Rob, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you so much. It's really great to be here with everyone on the panel. If you could put up my slides. And you can go to the first one. So public artwork is the main focus of my practice, both as a solo artist and for my collaborations. I see it really as a gift to the city and a moment of pause for the unexpected to reflect and enjoy. And I'll just go through 3 of my past works very quickly to put things a bit in context before I talk about Parchment. So Bui 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 was installed at Woodbine Beach. It's a cloud-like form that evokes memories of engaging with water, with each interconnected piece obscuring, reflecting, or revealing parts of the landscape and memories as you experience them. Next slide is Pride is a Protest. This was created for Pride Toronto. It's an augmented reality installation that was placed at the site of the first Pride Toronto event at Grange Park 40 years prior. It features an assembly of invisible protesters that examines the duality of Pride. On one side, you have all the colors and the parties, and the other side, you have all these black and white photos of queer riots and uprisings in Toronto. They serve a bit of as a reminder of how we got here as a community, but also as a community whose history is not easily disseminated from generation to generation. And finally, I'd be remiss to leave out my urban cosplay series where I create costumes of Toronto landmarks. The intent here is to encourage people to view both the city and the discipline a little bit differently, celebrating it and engaging with it in a very whimsical way. But I'm here to talk about my current exhibition, Parchment, which is now on view at Fenster Gallery on College Street, just east of Bathurst. Parchment is an installation of community collected parchment papers, exploring the mark made by baking challah bread for the Sabbath, leaving an imprint of memory. For observant Jews, the Sabbath is a day of rest that begins on Friday evening, ends on Saturday night. It starts with a Friday night dinner, usually. It includes lighting of 2 candles, blessing of wine, breaking of bread. The rituals for the rest of the day vary person to person according to their connection to the cultural aspects of Judaism, level of observance to Jewish law, and their denomination. So I grew up in a traditional Jewish household in Montreal among a large extended family where for the most part, my generation was the first to be born outside of our ancestral homes. We celebrated our holidays and shared a Sabbath meal every Friday night. And these elaborate meals would fill a home, most often my grandmother's, with generations of our family, and really the best Syrian food you can ever have. We had a spectrum of adherents of Jewish law in my family, but out of respect for the more observant members, nobody would bring electronics to the table. So I really don't have any photos of these meals, and my memories of any individual one really don't exist. And for the holiday meals, the first morsel of food enjoyed would be the challah bread. You know, oven warm, blessed, torn, salted, with pieces thrown across the table to every person. And currently, as you can see here, challah refers to the sweet, enriched, braided egg bread of Ashkenazi or Eastern European tradition. However, almost any bread could be blessed for the Sabbath meal. So my mother in Syria would use 12 pita breads. Sephardic Jews from western tip of Europe and and North Africa have a spiced round loaf that they use. Ethiopian Jews bake dabo. This points to the multiplicity and adaptability of Jewish life and culture over a history of often forced geographic displacements. The regional character embodies the act of ritual. In this case, it's baking, and it absorbs local flavors and practices, working with what's available and what's local, while still maintaining the tradition within the flexible Jewish framework. Moving to Toronto in the early 2000s, I did not have a community as I once did. The formal celebration of Shabbat was replaced with rest from schoolwork or my work life. In January 2020, I was planning to start hosting Friday night dinners with friends who are mostly not Jewish to reestablish a sense of tradition in my life. And a month later, I met my partner who shared this sense of tradition. And a month after that, the pandemic hit Toronto. So as a result, our plans changed to just dinners for two. And like many, I started to bake bread. I had a few successful sourdoughs, but I found it so finicky, so I just moved to challah. The science of baking and the artistry of braiding the bread really spoke to me, and there's something about the purposefulness of baking challah for our Shabbat meals. While you're doing it, you know that there are like other bakers across the world doing the exact same thing for the same purpose and across time. And there's a community connection to the ancestral connection that is tangible when kneading this dough. And after one of my bakes, I looked at the parchment underneath and I saw this golden brown imprint. And the act of baking became a form of photographic mark making in the darkroom of my kitchen's oven. In preparing challah, the parchment paper is the only thing that is unceremoniously discarded, but it's also the only thing that remains of the act. So here, what is left are fragments of memory. The weekly celebration of Shabbat is made visible with the memories embedded in the ritual itself. And the print becomes the marker of memory and time. Time is very much an essential ingredient, both baking and the Sabbath. And the weekly act of baking brought a sense of time to the era of timelessness that was the pandemic. And challah, with its dual prolonged proofing and rising stages, brought structure to the day itself. I personally feel the ephemerality of time in a very visceral way. So somehow baking and creating made it more tangible for me. So in January of this year, I did a call for these post-baked parchment papers for this installation. And I received so many from across Canada, US, UK, Israel, basically everywhere, from celebrities, home bakers, first-time bakers, and no two was alike. And each one of these parchments represents a time where people came together to create memories in this moment of pause, on this day of pause, in this era of pause. They represent a sense of purpose to continue sustaining traditions that have kept our communities thriving and growing and evolving in their own unique ways. And they're an invitation to come together even when apart. You know, many people contributed stories about making challah with their families and friends in person or over Zoom, where the recipes came from, whether online or passed down through generations, and their general thoughts on making challah. Having them on display, even more specifically at Fenster Gallery, whose focus is exclusively on public art and the Jewish context, located near the historically Jewish palimpsest of a neighborhood of Kensington Market, is a beacon for kind of all communities to come together over a meal. They're also part of the evidence of Jewish life, which historically often disappeared or was made to disappear throughout our history. So here I'm collecting them as an archive of this Jewish cultural and religious activity as a way to elevate and preserve it. So you could follow the work on Instagram to learn more about it at Parchment Project, and follow me in Fenster Gallery as well. And you could go to see it on College Street 24/7. It's a public window. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. That's awesome. I didn't know I have a lot of parchment paper and I threw them out. I did not get that email, sir.
No, a lot of people have kept their parchments, and then when I had this idea, they just sent them to me, and they've just saved up. It was really, really interesting to see other people had this kind of idea that this was important in some way.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful story. And I learned more about the challah that I enjoy a lot. So thank you. All right, Berlin.
Hey, woo.
Are you ready?
What an act to follow. Wow.
Right?
These are
Okay, so
really
what I'm
impressive projects.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to put you at 7 minutes because clearly 6 minutes isn't enough.
I should be good with 6.
6? Okay. All right. So let me introduce you. Berlin Reed. Is that your real name, Berlin? Is that your name?
That's my name. That's my legal name.
Lots. Okay, going with the legal Berlin. All right. Is an independent curator, author, and chef based outside of Montreal. His interdisciplinary work, what is wrong with me today? Work explores expressions of Black and queer identity, celebrating the brilliant ingenuity held in both cultures as a form of decolonial, Lord have mercy, resistance, establishing himself in 2009 through curating multidimensional pop-ups in artistic ecosystems across North America. In his practice today as a gastro curator, go on, Berlin focuses on creating enveloping spaces and new collaborative opportunities for marginalized artists. His most recent project, Brown Butter, which ran at the Angus Etherton Art Center, infiltrates the viewer's world through the sensual work of a dozen Black and Indigenous chefs. That is amazing. I like brown butter. Hit it, Berlin.
Hit it, Berlin. So thank you so much for having me here. As I said, I'm really intrigued by all the projects that were presented before and trying to fight the urge to jump into collaboration suggestion mode. So I'm going to jump into sharing. You can start actually with the very first slide. So brown butter is a project that had been in the back of my mind for some time as I was working through the years doing pop-ups, writing, teaching, working with artists, and sort of creating different methods and opportunities for collaboration. And it finally came to fruition that a relationship with Emily Changer presented itself with the Agnes as a location for brown butter. And so last year I pulled together a proposal and took it from the back of my mind to the front. And it is it just closed on Sunday, actually. I'm still currently in de-installation right now. Was there this morning. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and share the project with a wider audience, as we are in Little Kingston. And a lot of folks came from far away, but a lot of folks only have seen it online so far. So this is going to be the most in-depth introduction to the show. So I'm really excited for that. So for 6 weeks, brown butter filled the Agnes Etherington House, which is 5 rooms in a Georgian home, with nearly 24 new works by 13 artists. So in order to be fair to the whole cohort and all of the works present, I'm not going to discuss any of the individual works. We're going to do a walkthrough. There's a video coming up next. We'll do a walkthrough, and as we move through the show, I will share the didactic as well as a few of my sort of like curatorial reflections. And then if questions about individual pieces come up later, that's I will obviously answer them. And also, as the show is finally closed, all the archival footage and photos and images and artist statements and all of these things will be collected on the Brown Butter website in the next few months, weeks, and they'll be there for everyone to see. So with that, we can start the virtual tour. So Agnes Etherington's Georgian home has been cleansed through smoke, sound, movement, rituals, calling upon generations of ancestors and a pantheon of African deities. This is our home for a spell. Under the guidance of Ogun's machete, and draped in cloth wearing the weight of plantation life for the enslaved, guests are invited to wrestle with the realities of people and seeds transported across seas to be planted in unknown soil and imagined futures. Through multidisciplinary installations, historical relics, performance, and celebration, brown butter bombards the senses with unrelenting gravity. This unyielding current carries guests through a succulent environment that provides a temporal space for return to the sensuality of our root as oral inquisitors. Tangible artifacts of immersion offer the deceptive flavor of survival, inhaled, imbibed, ingested with equal parts jubilation and suspicion. Brown butter is a gavage of Black expression. The world wants to devour us whole, so here our guests will find their plates overflowing. This enveloping sensory inundation is a momentary immersion into the experiences of 13 Black and Indigenous artists. Bashir Mounier, Kosiso Chukwe Nenebe, Cyrus Marcus Ware, Marissa Leon John, Jade Ariana Fair, Rai, Kamal Macro, Rawan Ali, Gloria C. Swain, and Odaman Runners Club, with myself, Berlin Reed, as the curator. What began in my mind last year as a collaboration focused on production methods and expressions really became, as we went through the show, an elongated cleansing ritual using Black and Indigenous food histories We were invited in as part of Emily Changer's rehoming process for the Agnes, which is an entire global concept that she's doing to change the entire, the access of the space, the purpose of the space, everything about it. And it's an honor to be a part of it. And us taking over that space was a part of that process. And so I'm really, really honored to have that. Where we were brought in was to play around with sort of concepts of hospitality and service in a home that expects servitude and makes people feel like they are subjected as soon as they walk in. And here we offer a place that's challenging and contemplative for folks to investigate their reactions to the work, to sit with their feelings, while we really worked to scrub that place clean of colonial grime. When I say decolonial resistance, like we were in there scrubbing a colonial home with our art. And it was tangible, people felt it, we all still feel it. So it really was an amazing, amazing opportunity to curate the show. Many of the guests were able to take with them artifacts. 800 artifacts went out over the show to sort of take all of this experience that's condensed in a home and take it out with them and be able to sort of sit with things and let things resonate and really extend that experience. So people, while they think a chef curating a show with chefs and artists means they're coming to eat, they did not leave with full bellies, but they absolutely left with full minds. And so with the gravity inside that space, it was also equally important to embody joy and celebration and give opportunities for a culture to form around all of the artists that were coming in and out of the Agnes. So 2 large public gatherings were happening. We had a solstice party and a party just this past Sunday. Obviously the one Sunday I don't have footage for, but the solstice party is the next video that's coming up next. And I won't talk over that because it's just a vibe, so you got to catch it. You can move on to the next video. There should be sound, making sure. So what we saw here was just a day of celebration outside, taking over the streets outside of a museum that folks were coming up to us saying, you know, I was here a year ago and I didn't want to walk in. I'd never wanted to come to this place before. And so it was really amazing to just stand there and see all these Black and brown bodies dancing in the street, loud music, weed smoke, food, the whole 9. Like we took over the space in the most beautiful way. And you know, at the core, what we really did and what this work really was is it's a ritual. The whole thing was a ritual. This whole thing was energy work using gastronomy, using food in rituals, in ceremonies, bringing in spiritual practices from all of these different parts of the Black diaspora. And so from the cascara covered coconut that I cleansed the space with in the beginning, to poisonous cassava and Kosi's film, to the life-giving seeds in Cyrus's piece, to the sugarcane and Jade's piece, to the Aish and salt and sugar and spice and earth. We did it all up to this morning when I was blowing rum to take us out of the space. So for us, as Black people, as Indigenous people, these foods hold such sacred power. And so there was no way we were gonna do the show. This is what came out. I didn't tell everybody, hey, let's cleanse the space spiritually, but when you give all these Black and brown artists and say, hey, we have a space, it's a Georgian home and we're here to take it over, this is what happened. So I'm really happy, and I have to publicly thank Emily Changer for inviting me and thank all of the artists, this wild crew that tore that house down. And all I can say is we did the damn thing. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Berlin. Thank you. Okay, everyone. I just want to say that's amazing. And all you guys, all the ladies and gentlemen on here were absolutely amazing. I need to see everything. So we have 10 minutes left. So now I'm going to ask some questions. And I'm going to just ask the same question and you guys could answer each and see if we could do it like quickly. All right. So since you're still there, Berlin, I'll go with you. Many special moments in our lives are shared over a meal. What is a memory of key significance that occurred while breaking bread or dining with family.
Key significance. When I looked at the questions, the first thing I thought of is it's not the most significant meal in my life, but it is the most significant bite, which was the first bite of meat after being vegetarian and vegan for 14 years, because that is becoming a butcher and starting to write about it is what spurred my whole food career. Like that was what started my pop-ups and food education and curating and events, and all of the things came from that literal one bite. So there's no way I could say any meal other than that one.
Okay, nice. Samir, how about you?
It was more a series of meals. I was making a documentary in Xinjiang province of China, and people were so excited to host me that in one evening they dragged me from one restaurant to another, and I ended up eating 5 meals in the span of about an hour. So I'll never forget that. I'm still quite full from it.
Just the thought of it, right? Just the thought of it. Diane, how about you? Do you need me to repeat the question, or you got it?
No, I was worried when I read the question because maybe every meal I feel overcome with, meaning and things. So, today my son is learning to cook. He's 11, and we made some, pierogies and an onion from the farmer's market that was so fresh and sweet and startling and alive tasting. Just enjoying that together with him and noticing that, like, this just happens every day, and yeah.
Well, that's a great answer. That is an awesome answer. Rob, how about you? What is your special moment?
I think that one of the most significant dinners I've ever had was the last one we had at my grandmother's house, which happened a week after she passed away. After the week of mourning in Judaism was over, like our whole family gathered at her house, and we had, she had 6 kids, so there was a lot of people there, and it was very reminiscent of the dinners we used to have as when I was a kid. And now, people moved away, people have gotten married, so we don't have as large of these gatherings anymore. But having that meal in the house, the Sabbath meal, was just so special. I don't remember what we ate. I'm sure it was delicious. I know that it was definitely, the Syrian food that my aunts and my mother kind of put together. But that was just a very special meal. And I think it was also the last time that I was in her home. So, having that as the last memory was quite meaningful.
Oh, I like that. That's a beautiful, beautiful answer. Okay. Let's see. What flavors have you tasted that were inspiring and thought-provoking? In what ways do flavors speak culturally in significant ways? Since you're here, you can answer that, and then we'll go backwards.
Oh, well, I think that when people think of Jewish food, they think of Eastern European things like matzo balls and pickled herring, maybe, or Middle Eastern food like falafel and hummus. But you can't really contain foodways in borders and in populations and in geographic regions. It's very interesting to think that a UK staple like fish and chips is actually Jewish food that came from Spanish and Portuguese immigrants by way of the Netherlands and on the way to the UK, very much part of the forced displacement of Jewish people. And so the mixture of kind of what food is in Judaism is really the most interesting thing for me. And that's what I find very thought-provoking, is that it kind of borrows from where kind of the Jewish community ends up.
Okay. So Diane, do you need me to repeat the question?
Oh, no, that's okay. I guess maybe if I relate it to the orchard, something that really intrigued me was that you could taste history. Some of these apples that I found, were so rare that no one alive has tasted one in a generation. So, we found, I found, orchardists who were sort of collecting these varietals, and you could taste things that, people enjoyed and that, reflected their, values of a certain time in a certain place. And I just enjoy so much how taste, you can access that kind of knowledge and history and another time, and the values of others.
Okay, that's awesome. Berlin?
Yeah. So I have kind of a two-part answer. I definitely am drawn to like what people throw around fusion, and I think it can be done really badly where you just take two things and you smash it together. You start picking and choosing, and things are in competition with one another. But I'm such a sucker for true fusion cuisine. So cultures that have developed where people are mixed and they've sort of actually siphoned down the things that mix together and work together well, and they're using the indigenous ingredients of where they are. So I just a couple of weeks ago was at a Nikkei restaurant. So that's the Peruvian Japanese fusion, and it was one of the best meals I've had in my life. The flavors, the Latin and Asian flavors mixing together and becoming undefinable, and just this one symphonic experience was really amazing to me. And when I have foods like that, it takes me to my childhood, because I was raised by a German woman. I am part German. I'm also quite obviously Black. So this German woman who married into Black families cooks soul food and German food like back and forth, and it's nothing. So I grew up with fried chicken and sauerkraut, not knowing that that's not a thing everybody else was having. And so, like, anytime I see these, foods really meet each other in a way that works and you're not really questioning it, I'm always really impressed. So.
Okay, awesome. Samir.
Yeah, I'm reading a book right now called In Praise of Blandness. So I'm thinking a lot about the value of blandness, how it's a sort of all-pervasive. It doesn't take over. It allows the stage for more stronger flavors to sort of emerge. And this is really a principle of a lot of Taoist, Buddhist, and Confucian sort of belief systems. I mean, this book sort of talks about that. So I've been thinking a lot about this idea of the flavor of blandness. And, maybe it's because I'm in the US right now and I'm eating a lot of like tater tots and cream of whatever, So so I'm thinking a lot about the absence of flavor and what it sets the stage for.
Okay, so this one is a great one, and we're going to start with you because it's what we're in right now. How might our relationship with food be challenged by capitalism? So basically, the rising inflation, of the cost of groceries going up, GAT, all that. And then the last part of that question is, how can we care for one another in these times of struggle? So all of that, you could choose one part of it. You can answer all parts of it. It's crazy. I bought some chicken. It used to be like $1.79 a pound. Now it's like $3. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I can't imagine if you're in the food industry and the enormous effect it has. I don't think I have anything very wise to add, except that it has such an all-pervasive sort of effect on our day-to-day life. I think at the best of times, this sort of frugality and economy, has shown time and time again that sort of ingenuity and versatility sometimes comes out of having to work with cheaper cuts of meat or offal or ingredients that you have to grow. I've started growing food from home, and I'm thankful that I can have free food. So yeah, I think that's my meditation on that question.
How about you, Rob?
I think that, over the pandemic, we saw a lot of forgotten skills got revived. We had to strip back to essentials, and what was also interesting is that like TikTok food was making headlines, and it's like that wouldn't happen really in any other time. And like for me, looking at bread, it's accessible, it's affordable, few ingredients, it's portable, it's easily shareable. The original commandment to like make challah was actually it's to separate a piece of the dough and offer it to the religious community leaders. And it's a bit of a reminder that nothing is truly ours as individuals. You know, everything is a product of our community, and we should always be sharing with the community. And that's really kind of a thing that's at the core. You know, there's one holiday in Judaism where you are supposed to be giving gifts, and surprise, it's not Hanukkah, but it's actually Purim, where you're supposed to give meals to the poor, especially the poor who are experiencing precarious housing and may not have places to store, prepare, or cook meals. And even year round, there are community challah bakes that happen where people come together, bake together, and bake more than they need in order to give to whoever doesn't have.
Right. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, I know it's 6:01, but I still want to hear Berlin and Diane's take on this. So Berlin, hit it and see if you can.
So I'm going to skip past the capitalist critique because we'll get into a big old rabbit hole. But for me, I think it's just collective action. So in my day job, I actually run a food security program, and I do bulk purchasing for families of produce every single week. And I am still able to give the same amount of food, high quality produce at a low price, but is only because I'm working at wholesale prices. So if you band together with people and also choose your foods, you know, if you can't buy chicken anymore, you have to move to something else, or you buy chicken less, these things like this, we have to adjust. We have to take care of each other.
Of course, that was awesome. Thank you, Diane.
Of course, it's an enormous question. Again,
you could choose any part of it you like.
I guess it just makes me think about, not just growing food, but also collecting wild food and thinking about how capitalist, global food structures really alienate us from our food and who makes it and where it comes from. It alienates us from a place and from a season. And I think learning about all the food that's like in my ditches, right now is really wonderful and connects me to a place, and it's mostly free. And I mean, it's nice to share that knowledge and regain it, because I think we've been estranged from all of it, which is heartbreaking.
Right. No, well, I loved all the answers. I loved all the knowledge and information I gained from all four of you. It's amazing. Rebecca, what are we doing? Are we continuing? I can continue. We could talk all day. Tell me what you want me to do. Okay, then I'll ask another question. Okay, how does food also reveal roles and expectations and otherwise as to who should prepare meals and cook, and in what environments, domestic to restaurant industry? Diane.
Can you repeat it actually? It's like a quiz.
Okay, so
I'm in the sky.
I guess, okay, so the question is, how does food also reveal roles and expectations from the domestic to the restaurant industry? So like, who should prepare the meals? I guess gender roles, basically. How do you feel about that? How does food also reveal those roles and expectations?
I don't know. Maybe it makes me think about, when I first got a job as a professor, I had a woman colleague, warn me, never bake. She told me never bake. Don't give them cookies, and as a baker and I'm just pretty much obsessed in cooking all the time. I just keep thinking about that, and just maybe some of the risks for women artists or non-binary or trans artists to kind of take that expected role in, service or, some of those gendered kind of expectations. And just sometimes it's a fraught territory. I mean, maybe it makes me think about that, but I guess they do it anyway. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe it's just something I'm still thinking about.
Okay, no problem. So we're gonna everybody, I would love to hear your answers. So Berlin, if you can chime in really quickly, that'd be great.
I'm sure. I mean, I think the two things I think about, the most obvious, as you said, is gender roles and the ways that we sort of reward men for cooking out of the home, and the chef is that masculine role, and and the cooking that is happening in the home is disregarded and women in the kitchen are treated horribly. I mean, all of these things are quite obvious, but I think the other thing that maybe is not coming up to mind is the racial and class aspects of servitude, both in the restaurant industry as well as, I think I'm in Agnes' mind right now, so I'm thinking about the servants that would have been in that home. And so, yeah, I think about those implications, and we can go, I'll just stop there. This is too much.
Okay.
We'll be here all day.
I know we'll be all day.
We'll be all day. Just think about who's serving you.
Right, for sure. Thank you, Samir.
Yeah, I mean, nothing so much more to add from these, very insightful comments. I mean, I really think a lot about what Berlin just added. Certainly in my project at the Scarborough Museum, they have a kitchen there, so I had a chance to see. And they hire a lot of teenagers from, racialized and like university students in the summer from racialized backgrounds, and sort of have them enact a sort of colonial heritage kitchen. So I think, projects like this, engaging artists in this area, engaging very critical chefs in this area is super important, because we can shine a light on sort of what can be possible, how you can start you can change the rules a little bit more, rather than simply following how they've always been.
Right. I'm going to end with you, Rob. If you don't have to, if you don't want to.
Well, it's interesting that looking at my project, which was a community activated one, there was a larger proportion of women who submitted parchments to this project, to this artwork, and but it was also interesting that to the men that I spoke to, they are the primary bakers in their household. So I think that it's things are changing. I mean, it's, as mentioned, women have historically been responsible for cooking inside the home, and men anywhere outside the home, whether barbecue or in a professional kitchen. And that's changing, but not really fast enough. But it was quite interesting to kind of see that mix. It was surprising to see a lot of men as the ones who'd make the challah. And like I mentioned, at the community bakes, there are big men's bakes, there are women's bakes, there are mixed bakes. Like it's something that happens, that everyone does.
Right. Well, thank you. Beautiful presentations, everyone. So inspiring, really so inspiring. I, as a chef, am inspired by all of you. And I just want to say thank you. Your projects and practices are so intelligent and thoughtful, and again, so inspiring. Thank you for sharing with me and with the audience. This was amazing. Thank you.